Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics. So today was quite an interesting day from two of the most influential Brexit players currently, due to their complete incoherence on Brexit. Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn both continue to forge a path towards the destruction of both the country and their parties if others don't grab the steering wheel before they do too much damage. So Boris Johnson first, and ignoring his baffling and suspected made-up explanation of how he crafts model buses, he was back onto his insistence on leaving the EU by the end of October come what may, or do or die, as he said. This is not the first time he said it, but on other occasions he's also dialed it down. I did note, however, that when he was asked if he would resign if we were still in the EU in November, he then started chuntering something unintelligible before getting back onto his ideas for getting a new deal. And get this, not only does he think we can get a deal that Parliament will approve in time, but he doesn't just want tweaks either. Oh, no. He said that minor changes wouldn't be satisfactory, a complete rewrite of the agreement that it took the current government nearly 2 years to obtain, and in what period of time? The new Prime Minister is expected to be confirmed about July the 24th. So 3 months to go before we're due to leave. Not that he could hold the vote a mere few days before the deadline, as other parliaments in the EU would have to ratify it as well. And this is all assuming we take enough psychotropic drugs to imagine a world where Boris Johnson has a great plan already worked out in detail that he just hasn't been able to talk about yet because reasons. And that would satisfy not only every single member of the EU, but also the hardline Brexiteers in his own party and the wider party members. And I was puzzling over this at the weekend on the Patreon live stream a bit. And on the one hand, it's completely mad. He may not be the brightest, but Johnson isn't completely stupid. There's no way he can really believe that there is any wriggle room in the deal at all, let alone the capacity to blow it to bits and start again with just a few weeks to get almost Europe-wide agreement. And he knows it's nonsense. And his plan is to try and let us fall out with no deal and just blame the EU for intransigence. His political career would be instantly shot down in flames. Parliament would defeat his government if he even tries to take us out with no deal. This much seems ever more certain. But let's assume he's saying what he's saying just to be elected leader, and then we'll carry on kicking the can down the road like May did once he actually has got that position. Well, that won't work either. The Tory hardliners are not going to give him the time that they gave to May. May at least didn't commit to a no deal or definitely leaving on the deadline. It was just a preference, really. She merely stated them as acceptable. Johnson has on at least 2 occasions now said that we are definitely leaving before November, even if without a deal. So they will feel almost obliged to vote against their own party if he doesn't do that, because they'll be backing up the members, what their choice was for leader. And then it struck me. He's an Etonian. Eton is a very expensive private school which doesn't have a brilliant academic record, all things considered, but what it does do is create leaders. Not good ones necessarily. I mean, some are. But that's not their focus. They indoctrinate them with such confidence that they believe they can do anything. And confidence carries you a long way in this world. Brilliant sports psychology. But a bit of a worry in a scenario where you have to actually be acutely aware of reality, like government, for example. Maybe he really does think he can get a deal. Maybe he thinks that if he sits on his hands right up until the deadline, then the EU will finally crack and give him what he wants. This is despite there being no pressure on the EU to do so from their own businesses. Maybe he also thinks that the Tories who are threatening to bring down his government, if he tries to take us out with no deal, are bluffing. In this most nonsensical of situations, it's the only thing making any sense to me with the information I have available. Maybe he genuinely believes he can get a deal. Which begs the question, what's going to happen when he has to face reality and the EU go, no. So we continue to have a dangerous lunatic in charge of the government party. In all likelihood, he hasn't been confirmed as leader yet. But not to worry, there's checks and balances in any democracy. And in our democracy, the checks and balances to a deranged government offered by the main opposition party. Today was the day when Jeremy Corbyn was due to make a statement on Brexit policy. Now, I discussed this last week. There is growing pressure from even his closest colleagues, such as Shadow Chancellor John McDonnell, to get behind a full public vote with Remain as an option and to campaign for Remain, though potentially allowing Labour MPs, if they wish, to campaign for Leave. All right, bit of a compromise. Now, I didn't believe Corbyn would actually come round to this position today, especially after he got his strategist to fabricate the summary of a report into electoral outcomes. But I still expected the statement that was promised and thought he might at least firm up on the very small change in policy announced last week regarding commitment to a public vote with meaningful choices for Leave and Remain voters. Only we didn't get that statement at all. Not so much as a full steam ahead. Nothing. Not sure why I'd be surprised he went back on his word again, and there were a number of his close colleagues that were certain he was finally going to wake up and smell the coffee and stick Labour on the map as a proper opposition to the Conservatives as a Remain party. Many senior Labour figures, including McDonnell himself, are pushing very hard for this to be done before the new Prime Minister is confirmed. But every delay is costing them lost ground. And he was not expecting this delay. This is the thing. When the Shadow Chancellor, a position that is only ever held by an extremely close ally of the Leader of the Opposition, and indeed someone with whom Corbyn was as thick as thieves for much of his leadership, when that person is led to believe that they were going to make a decision today and announce it, and he was utterly convinced of that, there was no doubt in his mind, and then that doesn't happen, then you have a complete disconnect. The disconnect between leadership and parliamentary party was there as soon as Corbyn made sure that his shadow cabinet pact was only yes men and staunch allies. But now the disconnect is in the leadership itself. Emily Thornberry even questioned Corbyn's leadership qualities by delaying the decision. She said it's about leadership. Not that it's really a decision. If Jeremy Corbyn genuinely had a decision to make, we all know what it would be. No, it's a compulsion. The decision is to get behind Remain. There is no choice in the matter. It's a question of when and how much damage will be done while he procrastinates. But the point about leadership may have been to do with Len McCluskey. He is the powerful head of the Unite Union and is also a Brexiteer and has Corbyn in his pocket. There are some that think that the only way to move Corbyn's position is to move McCluskey's. But Labour met with the unions yesterday, and as predicted, it was the Unite Union that cock-blocked the whole thing. In the meantime, voters opposed to either Brexit or the Conservatives still don't know what a vote for Labour would mean on Brexit. They've already lost a lot of support, some of it possibly permanently, and failing to make the decision now is costing them precious campaigning time while the Conservatives are leaderless. Finally, there's another worry with this lack of leadership, though it concerns the party, not so much the country directly, so will only be of interest to Labour supporters. Though I always argue that turmoil in Labour is bad for the country because, well, I believe Labour governments are good for the country, but that's my view. Anyway, there are selections going on at the moment in local party associations. With the possibility of a general election this year, the call has gone out for MPs to say whether they intend to stand for re-election or not. There have, of course, been some attempts to infiltrate the local parties and force deselections in the same way as the Conservatives have started to see with former UKIPers. And then if a load of MPs, including senior Labour figures, end up being deselected, what then if there is no general election this year? The point was made that you'd have members of even the shadow cabinet, very senior Labour members, being deselected, but they're still Labour members. They're still members of the shadow cabinet for 3 more years. The whip would be useless. There'd be no punishment to keep deselected MPs in line because, like, what are you going to do? Kick them out of the party? They're still an MP. It's completely chaotic and symptomatic of the leadership of a man who is not a leader. He's a figurehead. We can give him that. He's a figurehead, but he's not a leader. He's not a strategist. You know, so the likely head of the Conservative Party and the certain head of the Labour Party collectively controlling 559 MPs out of the 650, though I use the term controlling loosely, and both of these guys are in a complete muddle. So on that cheery note, I'll leave you to it. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe for further content. Until next time, I'll see you later.